Over half of our population consistently uses AI. Especially in an academic setting, this number probably goes up, but even everyday tasks for personal use. The statistics on AI usage are alarmingly high. More interesting, though, is when you look into how it's used. And mainly, it's used for things like writing, coding, problem solving, and comprehension tasks. There's a clear pattern here that we offload cognitive workload, which would nonetheless be greatly beneficial to our executive function or our thinking abilities into these agents. The data essentially shows that not only are we replacing our very ability to think with these agents, but overall we have a much more shallow and less integrated understanding of whatever we are trying to learn after usage. There's also something to be said about the affirmative nature of these artificial intelligence bots, which contributes to a short feeling of progress and a momentary spike in maybe dopamine or motivation, right? Because these agents are known to confirm positively whatever we say as a means to keep us on the site and to keep us engaged in the conversation. But I believe this dynamic is somewhat detrimental to our humane ability to think. When it comes to this dynamic, I like to think of somebody who's going to France. And so they hop on a train that they think will take them there. Initially, you have this rush of excitement. Oh, I get to see the Eiffel Tower, I get to do this, I get to eat this. But eventually, you find the train has no destination, and you have to hop off even further from where you started. Obviously, the train would be something like the AI agent, and your goal of going to France would be any purpose you use the AI for. Maybe you want to learn C++, maybe you want to learn about biology or anatomy. Whatever the case it is, I think this analogy applies pretty well. It's this illusory sense of thinking, which I myself have experienced and believe most people are currently experiencing with AI. Now, I'm not for or against AI in general, but I would like to specifically highlight the dangers and the types of AI use and how I believe most of it currently is being used destructively, especially when it comes to Gen Z or younger populations. In the same way that money and power may amplify the person we already are, the habits and the mental framework which we approach life with, I believe AI does something similar, but the problem is that it's much more accessible, especially to younger people who have not set a great, let's say, foundational cognitive ability, or who are most eager to change and take shortcuts and become something greater. AI steps into this role and mediates this, often taking away the variability to achieve goals in a permanent way and create meaningful change. Now, there is data, of course, that demonstrate how agents can be used more effectively, and the consensus seems to be more like a partner, right? When you use it for things like feedback on your work or more personalization or maybe reduced friction to start work, all things that you might get from an actual partner, the learning outcomes usually get better. But I don't believe this is the case the majority of the time, especially, again, with the younger generation. The use of artificial intelligence depends on the person's relationship with said AI bot, and given that Gen Z are amongst the highest users, who already have grown in the digital age, right, the psychology and mental detriments going on due to how this AI is being used can get very scary. Most notably, some of these negative effects when using AI as this mediator for thinking are reduced working memory, meaning that you just can't hold information in your mind as long as you may wish or for any substantial period of time. It's like when you're studying for exam last minute and you cram all the information, spill all the information on the paper, and forget what that looks like the day after. There's no learning going on. There's no new connections in your mind. There's no growth. There's also inhibitory control, which means, your ability to control your impulses and to stay focused. Everybody requires, whichever career you're in, to stay focused on a certain task for a long period of time often, especially when you're trying to study something complex. Again, I'll use anatomy. If you want to memorize all the muscles of the body, you have to be able to reduce distractions about, the most recent show of Euphoria, or maybe you feel like you need to get a sweet treat or some food, or you have some impulse that is distracting you. This is exactly what's being I don't want to say targeted, but it's being negatively affected when you use AI as this mediator. And the last thing would be cognitive flexibility, meaning your ability to adapt to certain situations. This flexibility is important, especially in novel situations, when you're learning from somebody or something. Your ability to adapt to various situations, various unknowns, and put the dots together sort of logically, I guess, gets inhibited. And now, not to get too scientific, but I think anybody can see that if these areas are affected, you may experience kind of negative emotions and become somebody that you don't want to be. Most likely anxiety, stress, maybe even aggression, or things that are more impulsive. You might become less reliant on yourself and more reliant on this AI tool for fundamental processing, which again will lead to you not trusting yourself as much. You'll curate a low self-esteem, making you slowly desire more and more to replace yourself and your thinking abilities. So you can see essentially that using artificial intelligence in this way leads to sort of illusory short-term gains, and eventually may cause stress, anxiety, and a lack of trust in yourself, and an overall insecurity without this agent. The more you contribute to these feelings, the more you use AI. So when does this stop? I believe that it stops when you start to be authentic. The problem is that this comes at a short-term loss, usually, meaning less performance, less markers met initially, less external success, and maybe less acknowledgement by other people. And you start to focus on the humane part of life, development and growth that is not mediated by artificial intelligence. But what is authenticity exactly? Authenticity is essentially acting on your own authority rather than imitating others. And you may have heard before not to completely mold yourself around others' expectations, right? And AI relates to this phrase exactly, but it's a little more sneaky. AI has likely acted as this external tool for you, right? Not with expectations per se, like a person in your life may have, but with suggestions that are extremely frictionless and so convincing that they start to feel like your own thoughts. The affirmation that you get from constantly using this AI feels great in the moment, and it signals something good to us, and it's extremely tempting due to this frictionlessness, right? But again, as I was talking about earlier, inevitably puts us in a similar position than if we were to completely mold ourselves to the external expectations or factors of other people. Authenticity acts as a sort of a blunt solution to this issue you may be facing. The original word essentially means mastery of oneself or acting with authority, and implies acting on one's own authority rather than imitating others. Being true to yourself or not artificially simulating thinking and the accruing of knowledge is difficult because it comes at a short-term cost, like I was saying. Especially those who have used AI as a replacement. You're not going to get good marks, good performance indicators, or good external variables, whatever this may be. But within this time, if you understand that mastering yourself, or the self in this case, would be protecting and using your thinking abilities for the sake of permanent growth and maturation, that you build something more permanent and ultimately leads to more long-term benefits mentally and physically in the future than you would have ever gained with a sort of short-term artificial intelligence use. And it's only through this authenticity which you can build a true confidence or ability, because we ultimately know how reliant we are on artificial intelligence, and you may be able to hide it from your peers and hide it from other people, but truly to contribute to your own well-being, I believe it's best to go down this more authentic route, because AI, or any sort of artificial intelligence in this context, leads to the opposite of what may be good for you in the future. Again, there are ways to use AI in a healthy manner, which avoids the various negative outcomes I've discussed, but for the sake of this video, when the world demands artificiality out of you, try to be more authentic. And if you've made it this far in the video, thank you again for all the support. I appreciate all the comments, and please feel free to leave any suggestions about video topics for future discussion. I'd love to hear them, and I wish you all the best.